What it seems like they're kind of doing in this episode is they're starting to lay the groundwork of how this lack of information about this other group of people creates just, there's no understanding, there's no empathy.
Yeah.
And so it starts to make decisions like the ones that they're making, where you just jump to violence and retaliation, seem more logical than maybe they are.
Right.
Because if you had the information about Abby's father being killed, that's like a doorway for more empathy, more understanding of why she did the thing that she did. It's the lack of information. And also the fact that no one is trying to seek it out.
Yes.
Like no one's
problem.
asking the questions of
who are you?
Who are they? Why did they do this? We know they're not raiders. Like Ellie, that's the one thing Ellie does know. She knows they're not raiders. She knows that this is an organized group of people. So somebody should be asking the questions. Why did this group of like an organized militia go out of their way to specifically seek out him? Because they left everybody else alive. That should also pose questions. They left Jesse alive. They left Ellie alive. They left Dina alive. And they didn't have to.
Yeah. This is why I have an issue with the way Seth responded.
Yeah.
Because him trying to dehumanize them and almost villainize them in a way, it's not tracking with the evidence that they currently have.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't add up.
Him painting the wolves as like they'll come back laughing and they'll slaughter us all, when they only took out Joel, that should be forcing y'all to ask a lot more questions about like, what exactly am I really angry about right now?
Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time watching, we'd love it if you could hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell so that you are aware of when we post things.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast. My name is Esther.
And I'm Adrian.
And today we're here to talk about The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3.
Just a quick side note. Thank you all for the support that you all have brought. We just hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, so that's like kind of cool, not gonna lie. I mean, we've been doing it for like 2 years, but like I don't know if y'all seen some of our older videos. I didn't really know how to edit them, so
they are good in terms of their content. Stop.
Okay, I guess that's fair.
The conversations have always been top tier.
Yes. But just the production style, I didn't really gain the skill set until like last summer. So to see things change in such a drastic way in less than a year has been pretty incredible. But we just say thank you for those that have been with us all the way. I've had people in the conversation been like, I've been with you since The Last of Us. I've been with you since Jujutsu Kaisen, which is like, that's way back. So
oh man, JJK, cool. What a time. Yeah. Also, major shout out to this guy right here. He doesn't like to brag about it, but he learned a lot of skills on his own and taught himself a lot of things to make this happen. Because listen here, if it was just me, I was prepared to just sit behind this camera and talk and upload it straight to the internet. Okay. So all of the improvement that has been made to the production is because of him.
Yeah. And thank you to everybody that's giving me like super like great advice. I mean, I've hit a fantastic Frankie. I've spoken to like our friend Garrison Hayes. I mean, he makes great content as well. And some other people that I mean, people probably know, but they've been super helpful for us. So excited to see how large this channel can get. But thank you all for continuously tuning into us. It does mean a lot.
Yes.
I enjoyed this one. I'm glad that they slowed the pace down based off of what we got last week.
Yes. Also, I thought it was a good... I figured when I was watching it, I was like, oh, this stuff couldn't have been in the game because there's like nothing for you to do actively.
A lot of these scenes were not in the game.
Yeah. And he mentioned that in the post credit thing, you know, in the game that you don't really get to mourn Joel that much because the game, you know, it's a very action oriented game. So you kind of just have to keep things pushing.
Yeah.
So they got to spend this whole episode letting us kind of sit with the reality of what happened before we jump into what will probably be the bulk of the arc of the season.
There's a lot of talk about like the changes that The Last of Us is making, but they have made some pretty incredible additions that I think have helped the TV show. Some of those flashbacks that we got in season 1, the late night show thing in the first episode that wasn't in the game, going to, I think it was Indonesia in episode 2 that wasn't in the game also. Getting to develop Jackson, I think, is also a very important addition because the voting and the council spending time to really sit with them, that's also necessary, primarily when it comes to Seth, because the themes of Last of Us is really about, and Last of Us 2 really is about like revenge versus justice and forgiveness and dealing with hate. But there's also isolationism in there. There's some xenophobia that sort of kicks in. And you see a lot of that in the conversation that Seth brings up when he's talking about like they'll come back, which we know they have no intention of ever coming back. Like we as the viewer know it, but they don't know it, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then he says, and when they do come back, they'll be laughing while they kill us all, essentially. And I like this addition.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't make that connection. I think because I didn't really know that that's where we were going at all. I think the creators of the show knew that they needed that scene to add a little bit more nuance to what's happening.
Yeah.
Because they know that as viewers, we are primed to agree with Ellie.
Yeah.
Right? Like I too am like, yeah, we gotta go back. But there is an innate selfishness to what she's asking, sure. Right? Because it's like, especially with what they've added into the show now with what happened to Jackson that same day.
Yeah.
Asking to send all these people, like they said in the town council, you're asking to send like some of our strongest people at a time when we're our most vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And when lots of people have lost somebody, it's not just Ellie in this instance, right? The way that they've told the story in the show is Joel was killed at a time when also a bunch of other people were too. So everybody in this community is trying to heal and build back to the strength that they were at before, and asking to take a bunch of people to go on this mission is asking a lot. And she is not telling them the whole story of what happened. I think we can assume now, based on the scene in the hospital, that she knows the way that she was responding to Gail when Gail was like, what do you think he could have been talking about? And she was obviously lying when she said she didn't know what Joel was talking about. I think we know Ellie knows. And so her making this about justice to appeal to Maria, a former prosecutor, and making this a spiel about like doing the right thing, righting a wrong, is kind of rich, considering that actually that's what Abby was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, Abby was in pursuit of revenge too, but if anybody in the situation can say that they were trying to achieve justice, it's Abby, right? Because Joel is the one who started this cycle of violence in the first place, and Abby's the one trying to get her lick back. So trying to make this about justice without telling them the whole story of what's happening, I think adds another layer to the kind of self-centeredness of what Ellie is trying to achieve, even if she's not marketing it that way.
It's also trying to show just the geopolitical sense that they're getting into, like sovereignty of your land and what it looks like to retaliate, and like the differences between revenge and justice. What we were talking about last week's episode, Abby crossed the line. That was no longer justice with what she did, right? That's something more.
Yeah.
That's not just about like protecting you and getting justice for your people. You were trying to have a moment of dominance there, and exploring that and applying it to just like a lot of geopolitical conversations. I think that's super relevant, and I think it's pretty spot on.
I guess what I'm realizing the more I talk about it is like everybody is trying to make big decisions without a lot of information. Like just nobody really knows anything
about the other group.
About the other group of people, which is what's making it so easy for people to jump to the conclusion of violence. What it seems like they're kind of doing in this episode is they're starting to lay the groundwork of how this lack of information about this other group of people creates just, there's no understanding, there's no empathy.
Yeah.
And so it starts to make decisions like the ones that they're making, where you just jump to violence and retaliation, seem more logical than maybe they are.
Right. Because
if you had the information about Abby's father being killed, that immediately that's like a doorway for more empathy, more understanding of why she did the thing that she did. It's the lack of information, and also the fact that no one is trying to seek it out.
Yes,
like no one's asking the questions of
who are you,
who are they, why did they do this, right? Like we know they're not raiders. Like Ellie, that's the one thing Ellie does know. She knows they're not raiders. She knows that this is an organized group of people. So somebody should be asking the questions. Why did this group of like an organized militia go out of their way to specifically seek out him? Because they left everybody else alive. That should also pose questions. They left Jesse alive. They left Ellie alive. They left Dina alive, and they didn't have to.
Yeah.
They specifically got him. Yeah, people should be asking way more questions, and even without the information.
This is why I have an issue with the way Seth responded.
Yeah.
Because him trying to dehumanize them and almost villainize them in a way, or vilify them in a way, it's not tracking with the evidence that they currently have.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't add up.
Him painting the wolves as like they'll come back laughing and they'll slaughter us all, when they only took out Joel, that should be forcing y'all to ask a lot more questions about like, what exactly am I really angry about right now?
The other thing at play here is that this community just underwent a hugely traumatic, violent incident. Yeah. Even if it wasn't at the hands of these specific people, everybody there is feeling more unsafe than they normally do, more vulnerable than they normally do. And that's always going to heighten emotion in these kinds of instances.
Yeah.
But I mean, even with that, it goes to show something then that the majority of the town and the majority of the council does not seem on board with this plan.
Yeah, I like that. Because to me, it's showing how they're kind of using Jackson as like a moral compass.
Do you think it's a given that the 3 yeses were Maria, Tommy, and Jesse? Or do you think there's a possibility? I think there's a possibility Jesse said no.
A few people have said that.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility he did not vote yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd be interested to see if that plays out. There's also definitely some tension brewing between Tommy and Jesse. There is something happening there.
Oh, I didn't see it as tension. I see it as you got this old head that's like, okay, you young buck, I see you. But I think Tommy willingly letting him, help him build out those final pieces. To me, I see that as like, we're starting to see the passing of the torch to a future generation.
Oh, okay. I could see that too.
Because remember, Ellie was kind of like, you're going to be running Jackson one day. We all know it, but today's not today.
That was part of what was making me think that it was about tension.
No, what we've seen off of Tommy's character so far, I feel like he's a lot more measured than to let feelings like that get in the way, personally.
Okay. Yes, I could buy that. I could get on board with that interpretation of things too.
Yeah.
I was looking at it as like clearly this kid has like ambitions for something. And they mentioned something in the post-credit scene where they were like, the town is ready for something new. And I was like, okay, I wonder where this is going. But maybe Tommy will be totally fine with that.
One thing that I have been a little bit interesting is I have kind of liked what they have done with Dina's character. Mm-hmm. In the game, it's a lot more straightforward that like, okay, you guys are a couple and like it is what it is. In the show, it definitely feels like she is still perhaps working out her own sexuality, right? And it was what she was saying about going back to Jesse. And she's talking to Ellie and she's like, essentially it's a lot more comfortable with the reality that like, it's just something that Jesse isn't cool with, that maybe something's wrong with Jesse, because the only other option would be that there's something wrong with me. I like how they're sort of taking their time to sort of like exploring that a little bit, which feels like just an adjacent story plot to, Seth bringing that up. I think they're not heavily dwelling on it, but they're showing that like these finding yourselves and understanding who you are, like that still is going to exist even in this apocalypse.
I think it's also showing how deeply entrenched like heteronormative ideas are, because people are still wrestling with these ideas. Like Dina is still wrestling to come to terms with like what this means about herself. Because I think there's another angle you could take that I actually think most post-apocalyptic shows take this angle, where they just kind of assume like in an apocalypse everything crumbles and you start up from scratch. And Last of Us has never taken that stance. Like with the existence of the Federation seemingly to be like some sort of remnant of government military structure. Like they've never taken that approach. They've always taken the approach that certain things will withstand the test of all this violence, all of these things happening. Certain things will remain because humans are humans, and there's just certain things that are innate to us. Now, I don't believe that homophobia and heteronormativity is innate to human beings. I do think, though, that it's so culturally entrenched in American culture, specifically Western culture specifically, that I think an argument could be made that things like that would remain.
Well, I think it's showing in the wake of an apocalypse, the good and bad things about humanity would sustain itself. We talked about this in season 1, how like our faith would just kind of dwindle away in the wake of apocalypse, because that would sort of crumble worldview completely. But we can see how either Christianity has sort of reinvented itself for a lot of people, where there are still core values like we see in Carlisle at the Jackson Council meeting, but also with the Seraphites, a new religion comes out. Yeah, which should not shock us, right? A prophet comes in, and essentially a lot of what religious practices do is it just helps them make sense out of the world that can be confusing at times. And what could be more confusing than an apocalypse?
Yeah, I think they're doing a good job of showing that, like, humanity, for better or for worse, craves order. Like, the history of humanity is one of, like, finding ways to order and organize ourselves in various ways throughout history. And it's showing how, like, that is sustained even through the most chaotic incidences, right? Because like something like Jackson having this type of governmental structure where people respect the authority that Maria and Tommy have, that doesn't have to be a given, right? Like there's not really any way for them to enforce this, right? But people respect the authority because it also provides order. Yeah. It provides a sense of safety and stability, and normalcy is what they've essentially achieved. You can see how in all of these different ways, people crave that sense of just like structure. And I think that's human. I do think this episode did a good job grounding us in the relationship of Ellie and Dina just as a friendship and as a pair. Yeah. They talked a little bit in the post-credit thing about how, you know, it's a show about duos a lot of the time. And this is the new duo now. So we all, as viewers, have to get used to this being the pair that we spend the majority of our time with instead of Joel and Ellie. And they did a lot this episode, in all of these first 3 episodes, but in this episode, they did a lot to show us the dynamics between them. We've known Ellie, obviously, for a while now, but I think they did a lot to show how Ellie is so eager to be self-sufficient and independent. And she just does not like asking for help or seeking support, but she so desperately needs it because she's just not. Everybody needs help and support. She's so impulsive, she doesn't think. And so they showed how Dina really balances that out for her. Ellie was not.
She was not prepared.
Girl. But also you see how Dina understands that about Ellie. The fact that she knew that Ellie would be upset with her for not telling her immediately about the wolves, but she was willing to take that risk for Ellie's well-being. Yeah. I think that's always just a huge test of friendship. Like, are you willing to risk the friendship itself for the well-being of your friend? And she was. And I think that's the reason why Ellie chooses to forgive her.
It also makes me think about how Joel showed up for so many different characters in this episode. Because it really had me sitting with this question of like, how would Joel have reacted if roles were switched with some people? Because Ellie's like, Joel would have been like, I'm ready to go. Let's pack up our bags and head out to get revenge. But Tommy's like, I don't think that's how Joel would have reacted. Yeah. And then you're saying how important Joel was to Dina, which was a little absent in the game. So I appreciate that addition.
And it also shows like we're not just going to see, I don't know where Tommy's storyline is going, but I'm getting like we're not just going to leave it at just Ellie and Dina being the ones trying to process and deal with the fallout of Joel's passing. I think we'll also see a little bit of how Tommy has to handle it too.
So those are our thoughts. Let us know what you think about this week's episode of The Last of Us. Please let us know in the comment section below. And with that, we will see you all next week. Take care, everyone. Peace.